Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Dialogue. I'm Taimur. Shamil. Afghanistan for the last 17 years has been fighting war for peace and stability. Taliban now are holding talks with the American authorities and also parallel with the Moscow. There are two tracks at the moment going on between Taliban and other factions in Afghanistan, one in Qatar and one in Moscow. And this is very interesting. One is addressing the withdrawal of US troops and how US would handle and tackle with Afghanistan. It is interesting that a lot of new of the Afghan Taliban leaders are also joining in talks in Qatar, and there are a lot of names, new names, big names who have been controlling large parts of Afghanistan. Things perhaps are getting better on one side, that is the withdrawal of the US troops and the dealing of United States and Afghanistan. But at the same time, there is this recent terror wave in Afghanistan. There was a big attack in the Helmand province. Many troops lost their lives in this attack that was also claimed by the Taliban. Here and there are attacks in Kabul as well. Yesterday there was an attack on a gathering which was attended by the chief executive of Afghanistan, Abdullah, and former President Ashraf Hamid Karzai. So things are precarious at the moment. The security situation is not that stable, but the talks are going on. On the other side, on the Moscow front, Taliban are also holding talks with those factions which are ready within the Afghan political system, who are ready to hold talks with the Taliban. That too was criticized by the Ashraf Ghani administration. We'll talk about the Afghan conundrum, the Afghan situation, the Afghan issue at the moment, and also we're going to discuss about Pakistan-India relations, the tension that is still there between Pakistan and India. We all saw what happened last week, few days back, between Pakistan and India. Pakistan certainly gave a befitting response, but would we see de-escalation anytime soon, or should we also expect some kind of aggression from the Indian side? We are optimistic. Pakistan is optimistic. Pakistan has also sent us, Pakistan would be sending back Pakistan's High Commissioner to India. Peace gestures are there from the Pakistani side. We are going to discuss about all this with our special guest in the studios. Our first guest is Air Vice Marshal retired Ikram BHatti, renowned senior defense analyst and expert on Pakistan's national security and security generally. Sir, welcome to the show. Our second guest is Professor Dr. Amna Mehmood. She is a renowned analyst of international relations and Pakistan's foreign policy. Madam, welcome to the show. Our third guest is Mr. Hassan Khan, renowned senior journalist and expert on Pakistan and Afghanistan relations, and also on the Afghan situation that is going on at the moment. Sir, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Air Vice Marshal Bhatti, starting with Afghanistan at the moment. Pakistan and Afghanistan both have been striving for peace and stability. And we also saw last 17 years were very disturbed. Many people in Pakistan and Afghanistan specifically, they lost their lives. Now we want to see peace. Afghanistan specifically wants to see peace. Taliban, as I said earlier in my introduction, they are holding talks, but at the same time there is this wave of violence also going on in Afghanistan. What do you see, also keeping in mind new Taliban leaders are joining in? Do we see any peaceful solution anytime soon, or what should we make out of this?
Well, while we see that there is significant progress being made in between the negotiation between Taliban and the US, but at the same time we know that there is a new player in Afghanistan, that is ISIS, which essentially is going to thrive and become strong as long as there is unrest, there is turmoil, there is absence of peace, and that is what they would be looking forward to. And at the same time, we find that within the Taliban ranks, there are people who are little more militant in their thinking, and they would like to achieve maximum possible objectives by use of force. And if a settlement is contemplated between the Taliban and the Americans to their disliking, then they are likely to break ranks and go and join ISIS or maybe form a group of their own. So this negotiation is going to take place with this in mind. So Taliban are of course under compulsion or under pressure to make sure that all their or maximum possible demands are met, else they're going to lose people. And at the same time, we see that IS also has reasons to continue violence, and their violent approach is going to be more attractive to any dissidents from amongst the Taliban and from the other groups which are active in Afghanistan other than ISIS and Taliban. So the new wave of terror or the fresh wave of terror or the recent wave of terror within Afghanistan is, I think, a result of this situation where Taliban continue to be active and ISIS probably is still on the rise and still making attempts to gain ground. And this will continue till a solution is reached. And then, of course, I think if the Taliban are able to secure a solution which is agreeable to most of the members of the Taliban group, and of course with the American cooperation, hopefully peace should return to Afghanistan, but at that time the biggest challenge would be the ISIS. But in that case, it will be the Americans, the Afghan government, the Taliban, and also the world community, which will all be on one side fighting IS. Right. So it will be much easier to manage the situation then. So let's hope that that is what happens.
Professor Dr. Amna, this situation, ISIS in Afghanistan, is a big concern for the neighboring countries, for Pakistan, China, Iran for that matter. Russia is very much focused on fighting ISIS or any other terrorist organizations that might hold more grounds in Afghanistan. Regional countries and their concern, what is their concern basically in Afghanistan?
I think the old story, Cold War designs, they are still intact. And if we go back into the history of USSR invasion in Afghanistan, the recent document declassified by the American government, they contain the fact that since Najibullah was contacting US for rescue and he wanted to come out of the clutches of USSR, that's why this intervention was done in haste without planning, in 1979 intervention, USSR intervention. The same story is here, that USSR wanted to get rid of US influence there in Afghanistan, and so they are now asserting back to their courtyard, which is Afghanistan. And China is certainly a very strong player because China's concern is the peace in this region, because they are investing heavily, and whatever they are investing in Pakistan, whatever they are investing on the routes to Europe through Central Asia, that is all conditional with the peace in Afghanistan. That's why they are one of the stakeholders, and this is the better strategy for both big powers to counter US in Afghanistan. Instead, it would increase its influence in the whole Central Asia, and their investment and their political stakes would be less, both of China and Russia.
Right.
Yes.
So, and do you think that this parallel tracks that are going on, one in Qatar and one in Moscow,
yeah,
that is very interesting.
Exactly.
How do you see
Same
these
is the case
two
as
tracks?
AVM sub was responding to the question. I would add that that this is the strategy, that you keep your both options open. Sitting on negotiation table, you are making them realize that we can open the other avenue as well.
So Taliban are
that
keeping
is actually Taliban, and these, as AVM sub referred, that they are actually the groups which were affiliated or which are now affiliated with Taliban's. This is the message, or this is a bargaining tactic in international relation, that if you are not meeting our demands and if you are not responding to our requirements, then certainly we can open that side. It's a strategy, and it is normally used in these Taliban and US negotiations, and it gives an edge to Taliban, and also a message to US, because they wanted to dictate their own terms.
So, right. Mr. Hassan, talking about Zalmay Khalilzad as an ambassador, envoy to Afghanistan, do you think that he has been successful in bringing different factions of Taliban? And interestingly, we were discussing earlier, now a lot of big names from the Taliban faction, now they are coming in and they are joining the talks. Big people coming in, joining the talks, what is the significance?
Look, Taimur, first I think as for this Doha process and the Moscow process, these are almost the same. Here the talks are with the Americans and there in Moscow it was the Afghan diaspora, 40 Afghan leaders including the political, religious, ethnics, mostly opposition. They were there in Moscow and they were, it was an all Afghan thing in Moscow, they say. And if you remember the meeting between Zamir Kabulov and Zalmay Khalilzad in Ankara, Turkey, there they agreed on joint efforts to go and resolve the Afghan issue. And there they agree on a, because Taliban have two major demands. One, the withdrawal of forces, and American, the other states, including Pakistan and stakeholders, want that the Taliban must sit and talk with the, negotiate with the Afghan government the future of the country. But the Taliban say that we will not be going to sit with the government because they still believe that it is a puppet regime, it has no power, and already, you know, the period of the Ashraf Ghani administration is, they are going to have election in June. It was supposed to be in April this year, but it's being delayed to July. So now this Moscow, where the Afghan diaspora, political, ethnic, religious, and the political leaders were there, so it was a kind of structuring a proper team where in Ankara they agreed that there will be an all Afghan team, including the government representative. It means that the government will not be separately or exclusively negotiating with Taliban. The government team will be part of the larger Afghan team, which the Taliban demands.
So they would be meeting the Taliban as Afghani,
as Afghan,
as
Afghan, they will be meeting Taliban as Afghan,
not as government.
And the Moscow, those the Afghan leaders who were there in Moscow with Taliban, they are now going to Doha. And there is again another meeting is scheduled between, and it is called all Afghan, interacting, and they are talking and discussing ways how to agree on a future setup.
And Taliban agree with this idea?
Yeah, Taliban are right there, and they have women representative also, and Taliban were having no objection.
They were there in Moscow as well. So
yeah, in Moscow. I'm talking about Moscow. And the same team will be visiting Doha, including the women. And the women were very much active, both because they were representing the Afghan Women Network. And before going to Moscow, all the Afghan Women Network, it is an organization of all women organization in Afghanistan. So they are there, and Taliban's agree. So next time, I believe this what US and Russia, both the special Afghan envoy agreed that may include the Afghan government also, because in Moscow Taliban objected over inclusion of Afghan government representative, but this time they may. So I think rightly Zalmay Khalilzad, I really appreciate the way he is carrying the thing, and definitely Pakistan is on his backing, and they are sharing notes all the time.
So the new Taliban leaders that are coming in, how do you see them?
No, look, this was an American
Because at one
demand.
point we were thinking that, or the analysts were thinking generally that the group of Mullah Umar, his brother, son, and other people might not be joining in. They aren't happy. Haqqani group might not be joining in. So now a lot of them are coming in.
If you remember, even Zalmay Khalilzad has said that the problem with the Taliban delegation is then when we talk, so they go out and then contact their peoples in Afghanistan, which is called the Rahbari Shura, the leadership Shura. So it was very difficult to carry on, because you negotiate some things and then you have a break, and then you contact your leadership in Afghanistan, the Rahbari Shura, and then you come back and talk about it. So why not bring people from the Rahbari Shura? So this time, most like Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, this what you call the brother of Mullah Manan Umari, Abdul Salam Hanafi, Mullah Khairullah Khairkha, etc. All these are, and the brother of Siraj Haqqani, though he is still in the Afghan jail, Afghan prison. But these are the people who are representing the Rahbari Shura. So now they demand of the American that Taliban will be there. Now that the negotiating team of Taliban, it is an all-powerful team. Because Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, he is head of the political cell of Mullah Haibatullah.
So this delegation is getting interesting, and let's see that if this can work out for Taliban and for the Afghans for that matter. AVM Bhatti, Taliban, do you think, have changed as we are discussing? There have been women also interacting with the Taliban, negotiating with the Taliban. 17, 18 years on, do you think that Taliban have also realized that they have to change now? They might have to adopt and adapt to the changes that are occurring.
Certainly, it has been 17 years that they have been fighting. I'm sure there is fatigue, and I'm sure there is realization, there is pragmatism out of seeing within Afghanistan and reading the world as they see it, because over a period of time 50 countries were involved in that war operation against the Taliban in Afghanistan, and they have been seeing what is expected from the Afghans if there is to be peace, and what was objectionable on the against the Taliban. So they've been wise to it, and I think pragmatism has crept in, and now they are willing to sit down with women and accept them on the negotiating table and talk to them, listen to them, and accommodate them. And of course, primarily when these negotiations started, there must have been some backdoor communication in which the premise or the limitations of the scope would have been agreed, in which the Taliban must have indicated some sort of flexibility despite their very hard, rigid, fixed demands. So it is expected that they are now flexible, they are now pragmatic, and they are more accommodative. And at the same time, even the Americans are willing to, lower their demands in terms of asking for a large-scale military presence in whatever political dispensation that comes about in Afghanistan. I'm sure they must have scaled it down to a limit which would be acceptable to the Taliban. So I think Taliban are much more reasonable now, much more flexible, and it is now increasingly becoming possible and easy for a negotiated settlement to come about between the two sides.
Right. And Professor Dr. Amna, these peace talks, do you think that Taliban would show any flexibility with the Americans? Because there are reports that certainly after 17, 18 years, United States might want to keep some kind of presence over there in Afghanistan. Many experts are of the view that that might not be acceptable to the Taliban. But is there any guarantee that the Afghan soil would not be used by the Taliban, let's say other terrorist organizations that as we are discussing, ISIS for that matter, and Al-Qaeda was there once. So the future of
TTP, for example.
TTP for that, exactly.
Jamaat-e-Ahrar is
Jamaat al-Ahrar.
Yeah. I think that flexibility is visible from both sides. The US is also having some realizing about their limitation of power, as they were finding it very easy initially that they would be in Afghanistan, that is a primitive culture, and it would be very easy for them to win. And same is the case with Taliban. After 17 years, both have to come to some realities, and they are resulted in this dialogue on both sides. But there is no guarantee. I think the guarantor would be the US itself, because the regional powers realize that full evacuation, complete evacuation of US from this region is not suggestible, especially from Pakistan side, because at this stage we cannot trust, as we just discussed, that number of terrorist organizations are working, and since Pakistan is suggesting, and Pakistan has written a letter to UN to take Jamaat al-Ahrar on list, and US is resisting. It means that there must be some suspicion in Pakistan that why US is taking or backing those organizations which are terrorists, and it also depicts some sort of hypocrisy and double standards on the part of United States, that they are claiming that these are the terrorists living in Pakistan, operating from Pakistan, so they should be banned, and Pakistan should be declared as terrorist state because they are operating from Pakistan, though Pakistan government denies, and they declare them as banned organizations, Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. And on the other hand, those organizations working and operating from Afghanistan, they are supported. So I think that it is not easy to trust on any party unless there is a broader consensus on some sort of solution. And the process going on, as Hassan Saab mentioned, in Moscow and in Qatar, both Doha. And that is very helpful in developing some sort of understanding, because previously this group was excluded, that group was excluded, and now this time this is a realization that all the stakeholders should come to a broader consensus. They should address their grievances and there should be a better solution. So in that case, where all the powers would be agreed on some sort of solution, and also reviewing the constitution of Afghanistan, and that should be some indigenous solution to Afghan problem by all the political and military stakeholders, then I think there would be better situation in Afghanistan.
Very rightly said. And Mr. Hassan, looking at the history of Afghanistan, historically, some experts are of the view that there has been never a very strong central government in Afghanistan. Even if there were some clashes and something was going on in Afghanistan in the last several decades. This time, do you think, while Taliban, let's say, or the Afghan politicians for that matter, they would be working on a joint team that can work on the Afghan constitution, would that be possible? And do you think that any political consensus would be there between the Taliban and the Afghan politicians?
Look, Taimur, this is a big challenge. But this time, I think they have too many things in front of them on the table in the form of papers. Like we have the failure of Peshawar Accord, we have the failure of Geneva Accord, we have the failure of Bonn Accord. So now the Doha Accords, I think it will include all the parts. Why Geneva Accord? In Geneva, we bring all the opposition into Kabul, and as Madam said, if this time US copycat the way Russian left Afghanistan without waiting for a proper settlement. So the next morning, when the Geneva Accord was signed, the next morning US start withdrawal, in total withdrawal, and the US also USSR start withdrawal, and the US also locked the door and went away, leaving Afghanistan the way to the Mujahideen and to the regime, Dr. Najib Saab, when he was the president. So what happened? There was a fight between the government and the opposition, and that continued for a decade. And we saw what happened. The Mujahideen entered, and then there was infighting. Then we have the Bonn Accord. What the Bonn Accord did, in the Bonn Accord, those who were in powers, let's say Taliban, because Pakistan were accepting them as a legitimate government, and some other countries. Even the US was negotiating with the Taliban. The Taliban ambassador was going, and they were interacting with each other. In the Bonn Accord, what they did, all the opposition were brought to Kabul, and the people who were in power, let's say Taliban, they were kicked out of the capital. So what happened? Those who were kicked out of the capital, they start entering the capital and start guerrilla wars, and now we see the decades of another. This time, I believe, why this Moscow process? We saw in Moscow process, there were Karzai there were Hanif Atmar was there, Ustad Atta Noor was there, Kanuni was there, Masood Group was there, Khalili was there, Ismail Khan was there, even Jumbashimilli, this Uzbek commander, they all were there.
And they prayed together.
And they prayed together up to the Taliban Mullah, I think. So I think this time they are planning, including Pakistan is there, US is there, Russia is there. They are planning that we may not repeat what follow up the Bonn Accord, what follow up the Geneva Accord. So I think this time it is not going to kick one out of Kabul and bring another. It's not you go and I come, I go and you come. I think it's not going to be that sort of situation. That's the reason that negotiation this time, the first phase of negotiation is between the US and the Taliban, because these are the two major adversaries in Kabul. So once they agree, and their point is two. One is Taliban accept that they will not let Afghan soil used by the terror syndicate on the US interest or anywhere in the world. And the Taliban demands that the US must give a timeline, timeline for withdrawal of this. So I think they are going and they have negotiated almost the agreement. They are very close on the agreement. Next process will be between the Afghans.
Right.
what type of system, so there is a permanent peace in Afghanistan. So I think that is going to be where the detail, the devil lies in the detail. So the real test of the nerves of the Afghan leadership in the Taliban and the international community will be once the Afghans sit with the Afghan. So that's going to be a real process.
That's about Afghanistan. We'll take a break at this point, and after the break, we'll discuss about Pakistan and India relations. The tension still is there between Pakistan and India. There were many steps taken by Pakistan. There were peace gestures shown by Pakistan. Though the Indian pilot, the wing commander, was captured, he was returned to the Indian authorities. Kartarpur corridor was also a step taken by the present government, step taken by Pakistan as a peace gesture to bring peace and stability in the region. But that was not reciprocated by the Indian side. We have been discussing this earlier. Now, talking about the future, what would be the future of Pakistan-India relations? We want peace. Would India reciprocate? Would the BJP government, backed by RSS and Shiv Sena, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the Prime Minister of India, would they go for peace with Pakistan, or should Pakistan wait for the new government to come in India, and then perhaps we can have better relations? Because Pakistan now is working on a mega economic activity. Pakistan and other countries in the region want peace and stability. Is India also for peace? We'll discuss about this after this break. Stay with us.
Level.
Welcome back. We're discussing Pakistan-India relations and the tension that is still there between Pakistan and India. Pakistan has shown the peace gesture. Would India reciprocate? This is the question. This is the big question. Vice Marshal Bhatti, the elections in India are just around the corner. This is the high time for BJP to actually sell that anti-Pakistan sentiment in India. And what just happened between Pakistan and India, interestingly, that was also criticized by the educated, sane Indians as well. BJP at the moment, how do you see the BJP morale and the morale of the Indian armed forces, the way they have just politicized the whole issue?
Well, I mean, unfortunate for the Indians that whatever they attempted, it failed, and India, BJP and Mr. Modi presently, they stand bruised, they stand embarrassed. Now, the ball is in their court. Now, they have to decide whether they accept that their strategy did not work and they change it, do something more constructive, or they pursue the same strategy with a much stronger vigor, i.e. create another Pulwama and come in a bigger way. Now, this is a decision to be taken by Mr. Modi himself. And when you look at his speeches in the recent past or last 1 week, he has even used threatening language, which goes on to say that he probably is wanting to pursue the same strategy. But then we know that this is the recipe or this is the formula that he has been using for quite some time in order to win votes. And he unfortunately still believes that this can still work, which of course is alarming for us. That means we cannot lower our guard. That means we must stay prepared. We can say that a battle has been won, but the war goes on. So we have to be on the guard, and we hope that these saner voices within India, the more rational people within India, even within their party, in their media, in their intelligentsia, in their academia, they can of course speak louder, make themselves heard, and then bring about a change in the mindset or thinking of Mr. Modi and his party. And they accept that this strategy is not workable, and they do something more constructive and useful for their own people, and let peace come and remain within the two countries.
Dr. Amna, diplomatically, in terms of international relations, how do you evaluate Prime Minister Imran Khan's stance on Kartarpur, then returning the Indian pilot, now also saying that we would be sending a High Commissioner back to India, to Delhi? So these are all peace gestures. Diplomatically, how do you evaluate them?
I think Pakistan is at a very good diplomatic position, I think first ever in history. You know that you are having strong support from all the world community in the concrete form. You see, the first time in history OIC passed a resolution having a word for India, that is Indian terrorism. It means that this and even Pakistan was not there, and we boycotted
in the presence of the Indian foreign minister.
And that too in the presence of Indian foreign minister, and there is hue and cry in India that you were there to make us embarrass. And this was a failure of Modi government and the foreign minister and their diplomacy. And you see that there was no mention of Pakistan in the resolution passed by the UN Security Council, though the US State Department was having it, and they mentioned that Jaish-e-Mohammed, a banned Pakistani organization, but it was not there in UN Security Council. So Pakistani diplomacy is going very good, and I think that is a continuous process, and we continue to work on that. And on the other hand, as you were asking to AVM Sir previously that whether Modi is going to gain this, I think that Modi is trying to reach out those audience which are already extremists living in villages, and they are having not that much access to the intellectual debate going on against the Indian standpoint and Modi's action. And he would be successful in those areas in winning some seats. But on the other hand, he is going to lose in urban centers where people are more educated and having reach out to public debate going on in India. So I think that if there would be any success on the part of BJP, that would be limited, and at the most they would be able to make a coalition government, and in that case their extremist agenda would be reduced. But right now it would continue for few months, and there would be no response to Pakistan's any gesture, positive gesture coming from Imran Khan government.
Mr. Hassan, do you agree with that, in near future we shouldn't be expecting much from the Indian side? But interestingly, the way they have internationalized the Kashmir issue, that is exactly what was needed, you know, that Adil Dar, a young man in Kashmir, would blow himself up, would attack the Indian troops because of certain reasons, and there are a lot of questions. What do you think?
Taimur, I think I'll be the first man to cheer and clap if Modi win, and I hope he will win. The reason is that I'm least concerned about what's going inside India, and if Modi win, the way they are, the image of India and internal conflict, the way I think it's growing more and more. In 5 years, we saw where India is. Once people were talking of shining India. Now it is not a shining India. Yesterday there was a report that Muslims are being discriminated, and other minorities are being discriminated.
They are being beaten up in other cities.
I think why I'm happy in the last 2-3 weeks development, for the first time the international community, I think, listened to the Pakistan's narrative of peace. Now everybody accepts that Pakistan is talking of peace while India is talking of war. Otherwise, we were talking continuously for decades that we want peace, we want talks with India, but people were not accepting that. One. Two, Pakistan's military, I think, has vindicated itself in the eyes of the people, whether it is Air Force, whether it is Navy, whether it is Army. See, people are feeling proud the way the Pakistan's military conducted itself, and there was a restraint and there was an attack. I think You see the Pakistan Air Force, you see the Pakistan Navy, you see the Pakistan military. They exercise restraint. I think the way they targeted the Indian targets, but they avoid human casualties. They could do, I think, the casualties in thousands, but they avoided it. But they sent a strong message to Pakistan's Navy. I think they thought it this submarine, and it is, I think, for any, it is a big prize for Pakistan Navy that they detected their submarines, I think, right in international border, very close to the Pakistan's marine border. Right. So the way it's Pakistan's army. So I think one in Pakistan intelligence agencies, I think they came to know what is the international plan against Pakistan. Prime Minister, when he was saying that it was India, it was Israel, and the other countries, it was the US, it was Afghanistan, and to an extent it was Iran. They were all conspiring against Pakistan, and they were trying to, I think, Pakistan is gradually turning out to be a country, turning out to wean away itself from what the wrong the state or the government has done in the past. But I think these forces, they are not ready. So some are saying that the whole plan was getting prepared in Helmand, where this biggest attack of Taliban happened at Shorab base. Shorab it is for 40 hours. I think they engaged the highly secured and the well protected base there. So my satisfaction is that Pakistan stands, international media, international capitals, international bodies, all are talking good of Pakistan's military, Pakistan level of preparedness, Pakistan high level of professionalism, and the way we tested JF-17 there, I think is, so all things goes in Pakistan's favor. So I'm not concerned whether India's, in India, Modi's graph is high or it is low. If it is high, that is very good for us. If it is low, I think that's bad for us.
This is interesting, and Air Vice Marshal Bhatti, this time personally I am happy and I feel confident as a Pakistani that the unity that we showed as a nation, the decency that we showed even on the social media for that matter, our media as well. Sir Hassan, since we host talk shows as well, our commercial media, private media as well, the decency that we showed, and also
it was all
the high moral
media.
standards.
I think it was national media. There was no public and
exactly national media.
It was all national media then.
National media and the high moral standards that we have shown. We kept the Indian wing commander with us. He was sipping tea. He was cool and calm because we made him feel comfortable, and then we returned him. So these are the incidents, let's say, when you show your real values. How do you see Pakistani nation and the values that we showed to the world?
True, I think it was an excellent demonstration of our character as not just the armed forces but as a people of Pakistan.
As a nation, yeah.
And you see, despite all the political polarization, be it religious, be it ethnic, be it sectarian, be it provincial, be it linguistic or whatever, but when it comes to the security of Pakistan, the sovereignty of Pakistan, the nation, without anybody advising them, without anybody calling to them, they just get united. That is, I think, the maturity of the people of Pakistan. They know where they can express their dissent, express their differences and sort it out, and they also know where they have to stand united despite all their differences and show to the enemy, show to the world that we as Pakistanis, we are one nation. When it comes to a situation where our nationhood is threatened, where our sovereignty is challenged, where our country is challenged, they get together and they get united. So I think it is once again very reassuring for the people of Pakistan to have faith within themselves, and it is of course an excellent demonstration to the rest of the world what are Pakistanis. And I think Pakistanis all over the world today stand proud, and they are being respected and identified as such, which is excellent for Pakistan. I mean, out of this crisis situation, I think this is something fantastic that has come out. And you see, when you talk of the character of or the morale of our armed forces, we had a similar situation during Kargil. One of their flight lieutenants was shot down. I mean, he was treated with respect and with dignity and with care, and he was returned in good shape. And here in this case, of course, the situation was far more precarious. It was far more serious. We are far more closer to an actual war as compared to what was happening in Kargil. And over here, normally, until and unless the crisis is over, the conflict is over, you retain your prisoners. But in this case, it was found prudent that in order to show our love for peace and our desire for peace, we need to release this person soon after, so that not just to the Indians but to the entire world we demonstrate that we are actually for peace. And we like to take this initiative, show this gesture, and demonstrate our desire for peace.
Right. And Dr. Amna, are you still, do you agree with this idea that the government is of the view that they will still work on the Kartarpur corridor, they would build things over there? The things from our side are ready. We want India to now reciprocate and give answer. Do you agree with this? And
it means the ball is in Indian court, and Pakistan is continued with all its peace gestures. And the international media is again pointing out that Pakistan is with peace and India is with aggression. So I think it is very positive image of Pakistan, and that is continued. And moreover, that we are sharing border with Punjab. And that Kartarpur border is actually a reflection of their sentiment, opening of Kartarpur border. So if that side is secure, and there are calls for from Sikh organizations to Sikhs not to fight against Pakistan. So it is again detrimental for Indian aggression designs.
And also many people in that part, Indian part of Punjab, Mr. Hassan, they also realize that Pakistan has gone out of the way with India to open its Kartarpur corridor and giving actually a concession to the Sikh pilgrims, so that they don't have to go to other places and then come to Kartarpur. They can just come to Kartarpur anytime they want.
I think, Taimur, Pakistan is playing all its balls very well. I think whether it was confronting them at the border, or whether it is the Kartarpur, or diplomatically, or morally, I think Kartarpur, I think it is for us, it is an emotional and a diplomatic one, but for the Sikh, it is a religious thing, I think. So we have to respect the religious sentiments. I think if today Pakistan and India, they are hot in conflict, but tomorrow I think it's not necessarily the conflict will prolong for years. We hope that already de-escalation, definitely both are at a high level of preparedness, and they are, I think that they are highly guard, but still the working is going on to de-escalate, and there is no war and there is no conflict. So definitely it will happen. So we have a large Sikh population. India has the large Sikh population. I think it's their emotional and their religious. Pakistan is, it is good that Pakistan's carry that project. Already work is going on. Infrastructure is being built. FWO is instructed by the Prime Minister that state-of-the-art facilities must be erected there. So I hope India will also, though they have this very small thing that they do, that instead of receiving the Pakistani delegation in Delhi, they say we will meet at Atari, Wagah Atari, across the border. But I think for Pakistan, these are petty things. We are thinking of bigger, and the bigger aim is to get Kartarpur connected with across the two holy places. Get connected. That is the aim. Whether we meet at Wagah, whether we meet at Atari, etc., whether in Delhi.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you all of you. It was Mashal Bhatti. Pleasure having you on the show. Professor Dr. Amna, thank you for your time. Pleasure having you on the show. Mr. Hassan, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your time. This political, strategic and diplomatic blunder of BJP government, of the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, is going to haunt BJP, Narendra Modi, RSS and Shiv Sena for decades to come, even to the Indians. The good part is that Pakistan has, as always, shown a very mature stance on the whole issue. We want peace, and we want peace and stability in the region, but we have the capability to give a befitting response to any misadventure from the Indian side. The encouraging thing is that there are a lot of Indians, sane, educated Indians inside India, who are now criticizing this political blunder, as I said earlier, the strategic blunder of Modi government. You can't put the fate, the existence of India after every few months and years on stake. There are two nuclear states, Pakistan and India. Just to win elections, you don't put your country on stake, the existence of your country on stake. Thank you for watching today's show. See you next time. Khuda Hafiz.